In the early 18th century, a remarkably thin fabric from India dictated the movement of global wealth. It was the disruptive technology of its age. It was a material that royalty and commoners alike sought with equal intensity. At the time, Europeans wore heavy wools and stiff silks. When Indian cotton arrived, it offered a lightweight, breathable alternative that could be cleaned with ease. This surviving piece of fabric is known as chintz. Look at the floral patterns. The colors remained vibrant and fixed, regardless of washing. The demand for these textiles caused the domestic silk and linen industries in France to collapse. While Europe possessed advanced military hardware, in the realm of textile chemistry, they trailed Indian artisans by centuries. The French government responded with force. In 1686, King Louis XIV issued an edict outlawing the production, import, and even the wearing of Indian cotton. Violators could be sentenced to hard labor as slaves on galley ships. The strict prohibition fueled a massive underground black market. The ban transformed the cotton into a highly lucrative status symbol. The French East India Company realized they could neither enforce the ban nor replicate the color-fast properties of the fabric. Their only remaining option was to execute an industrial heist to steal the chemical recipes. The first espionage attempt was led by a merchant named George Roques. He returned from India with a 333-page manual, but the information was useless to French dyers. Roques documented the process through a commercial lens. He recorded prices, materials, and labor costs. He did not recognize the chemical reactions occurring during production. 50 years later, the French sent Antoine de Beaulieu. As a naval officer stationed in Pondicherry, he brought a rigorous observational mindset to the task. Beaulieu used corporate funds to build a field laboratory. He hired a group of chaliars, master Indian dyers, and instructed them to execute the entire process under his strict supervision. Beaulieu utilized a protocol called continuous sampling. He cut physical swatches of the fabric at every stage of production to track the chemical evolution of the cloth. Beaulieu observed how artisans drew sharp lines on porous cotton without the ink bleeding or blurring. This microscopic cross-section shows the first step, soaking the fabric in buffalo milk. Large milk fat molecules penetrate the cotton fibers, creating a protective film over the porous surface. The artisans did not paint with dye. They drew with a clear liquid mordant, such as liquid alum. A mordant is a chemical compound that fixes a dye to a fiber. The fat barrier from the milk keeps this invisible liquid contained. The process concludes when the fabric is submerged in a boiling bath of chai root dye. The red dye molecules bond only with the areas treated with the invisible mordant. By changing the mordant, the artisans could alter the result. Using iron water instead of alum in the same red dye bath produced a permanent black. Indian artisans were executing sophisticated chemistry, writing multi-stage biological code directly into the fibers of the cloth. Beaulieu sent his final manual to Paris. He pasted physical fabric samples directly onto the pages to link his written observations to tactile evidence. This document acted as the definitive source code for European textile production. It transformed a specialized craft into a replicable industrial formula. Look at this machinery. Entrepreneur Christophe Philippe Oberkamp recognized that he could use this hardware to replace the slow, hand-drawn work of Indian artisans. These patterns are toile de Jouy, a monochrome textile featuring repeating pastoral scenes. Oberkamp created it by applying the stolen mordant formulas to engraved copper rollers. Europe decoupled the chemistry of the East from the human hand, integrating it with the mechanical output of the Industrial Revolution. Equipped with these stolen chemical formulas, European factories flooded the global market with cheap imitations of Indian textiles. The chaliar artisans, whose generational knowledge had perfected the chemistry over a millennium, saw their industry collapse. Beaulieu's original manual remains in a Paris museum today, a record of how Western innovation was built by extracting and adapting the genius of the East. European machines replicated the chemical equations, but what intangible elements of skill, spirit, or culture were lost when human mastery was replaced by a copper roller?